Jebediah had been on the moon for a few hours. After watching the command module fly overhead, it was time to return. This lander has 2 stages. The return stage is just the cockpit, a fuel tank, and 4 tiny engines. It is able to reach a low orbit, and can even meet up with the command module, but on this occasion, Jeb had only 7 minutes of electric charge. Thankfully, just enough time to reach a circular orbit. But Bill will have to do the rendezvous and docking. While Jeb was waiting in the dark and silent capsule, he saw something strange, a structure on the lunar surface. Impossible. Bill had no time for gazing out the window. He was not a pilot and did not have stability assist. Eventually, Bill made it. Once attached, Jeb hopped over with the collected science. The return from the moon can be a little unintuitive. You see, you need to lower your periapsis relative to Kerbin. How do you do that while in orbit of the moon? It helps to remember that the moon is orbiting Kerbin itself. Burning prograde around the leading edge of the moon's Kerbin-facing side puts you on an escape trajectory pointing roughly backwards along the moon's orbit. Maneuver nodes are the easiest way to plot this out. On the return trip, the spacecraft will be travelling at about 3 kilometers per second, so do check your heat shields are attached properly. Unlike me, the capsule approached critical temperatures, but there was little Jeb or Bill could do. Would the first lunar mission end in tragedy? No, it didn't. Luckily. Must remember to fix that. So, shall we do it again? This launch wasn't great. Stage 2 has very low thrust compared to its weight. I tipped over too much and had to desperately fight for altitude. Still, they were able to get to an inclined lunar orbit. This has its advantages, as I can land at biomes off the equator. Tanbal landed pretty much on the equator anyway, in a midland, next to this huge rock, which is very exciting. From orbit, a very pronounced ridge is visible. Just over the next hill, Tanbal could see it for himself. He modestly chose to name the place Tanbal's Ridge. After a long walk back to the lander, some time was spent setting up surface experiments. With that done, it was again time to return home. As the command module is inclined, the moon's rotation had taken the landing site eastward. It was no problem to change into an equatorial orbit, where Tanbal could take off, dock, and return to Kerbin. Really must fix that heat shield. Let's do that again. This time, Valentina and Bob are headed for Minmus. The Joule 5 is a very wobbly rocket. It has been strutted down aggressively, but still flexes alarmingly. As before with Minmus, I launched at just the right time to meet the planetoid as it passed the ascending node. But I forgot about supplies. This spacecraft has the same supplies as the moon missions, but it takes much longer to reach Minmus. 4 days compared to just a few hours to the moon. So we've got to get there a bit quicker. I did this obviously, by going faster. Dres 6 went into a Kerbal escape trajectory to get there in time. Once in orbit, Bob climbed aboard the lander. He had no pilot training, but this lander was equipped with a probe control unit and had been modified to be just one stage with extra fuel. This is because Bob is a scientist. He can reset experiments and gather science from multiple biomes. The first landing site was on a slope, and just 300 meters away was a midland. Another few hundred was a lowland. After that, Bob landed on this mountain for highland science, the flats, greater flats, and great flats. I could have gone further if I'd been more efficient, but oh well. Bob got the science from 7 Minmus biomes. There was only a dribble of fuel remaining after all that, but only a drop is needed to reach Minmus orbit. Once there, Bob can hop out, grab the experiments and... whoa. That's a lot. Damn, okay. It's still going, there we go. And fly over to the command module. Valentina and Bob did run out of food on the way home, but they were fine. Really must fix that issue with the heat shield. Again, Jeb and Bill are going back to the moon, and have this flip maneuver down to a T. The lander is again probe controlled, so Bill can be the one to land. It was tricky, as I couldn't just tell the spacecraft to hold retrograde. But I brought Bill for a specific reason. He is an engineer. You might notice the stock cargo containers have been replaced by a KAS storage container. In here, we have all the parts needed to build a rover, and Bill can do just that. It's awkward to build, and even worse to drive. It feels like I'm driving on a conveyor belt made of ice, with random slips, flips, and phantom accelerations. Bill landed in the far side crater, and drove to the canyon in the north. It's creepy to not see Kerbal in the sky. Once the science was collected, and flag planted, Bill drove back, crashing spectacularly into the lander. Thankfully, nothing was broken, and he could safely return to orbit. This would be the last time for a while that Kerbals would set foot on another world, but we will return.